Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into Tea Talks. We have Gaylon here with the Dickinson Press as one of the sports reporters. He came here from Florida. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Florida in March?
February
9th. Okay. He came here. Gaylon from the Dickinson Press. I should probably start over. Do we still have... So, tell me more about what you guys have going on.
Well, a lot of the things that we're trying to do is to relate to the viewer, reader, listener, and all of that. When you live in a small town, it's very insular, and at times it can be very provincial in its focus and its depth, because people are so used to being here. Whenever I was out in Beach talking to Mike Zier, the coach out there, he used a term that I've used many, many times in the past. And that is that when you're in Midwestern towns and you're out in rural America, every little town is like an island. It's out in the middle of an ocean of corn, sorghum, whatever.
Yeah.
Wheat. And those little towns grow into the middle of that, and they're only going to get so big, because somebody owns all that property around the outside of it. So that island is still that island. Mm-hmm. They still have all the stuff you need on that island, but then you need to get into a boat and go to another island occasionally to find something that they might need. And so you get used to traveling from island to island. And growing up in Florida, it's very similar to knowing people who are from the Caribbean and on those islands down there. You just have to get used to things not showing up whenever you want them to show up. Mm-hmm. Like people over in the Bahamas, they just get used to it. You know, it's going to take a week and a half for this stuff to get here. And yeah, I know it's milk and it's bread and things like that. It'll come. It'll be arriving sometime soon. And a buddy of mine actually does that job. Mm-hmm. A guy I graduated school with. And he does what they call puddle jumping. And he has runs because he's got a pilot's license. He flies out of Stuart, Florida, and flies stuff over to the Bahamas, down to Costa Rica. He did down to islands that are down in the Caribbean. Right down to Jamaica. Barbados, mm-hmm. and places like that, and he goes all over the place, and that's what he does for a living, and he makes a fabulous life out of it.
Yeah.
So, but it's very similar here. Mm-hmm. Look at what people are willing to pay for up here. That they're not. I don't pay as much for a lot of stuff that's down in Florida as you do up here, mm-hmm. because it takes a while longer to get here. It takes another 12 hours for it to show up here. Mm-hmm. It's understandable.
Mm-hmm. So Florida, do you go back and forth?
No.
Not.
I mean, I just got up here in February.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah, I've only been up here for that long. But I told my mother whenever I got up here, I'm not going to be coming home for at least a year, mm-hmm. because I want to get used to it here before I break away. I didn't want to allow myself to get homesick. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get used to this place before I permitted myself an escape route or some reason to leave, because I love it up here and I like the people up here. I didn't know I was going to love it as much as I do, but I do love it up here. So
yeah, how was that? What was that like going from there to here?
When I was in the Air Force, I went from South Mississippi, where I had met my ex-wife, and my first duty assignment was in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And I'm from Florida, so the way they did it is they had this sort of hazing ritual that they would do, where they would read your assignment out in front of everybody. There's a 50, 75 guys who were out in this formation. And then they'd read your assignment out. Parker, got your assignment. Okay, where am I going? K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base in Michigan. I was like, where's that? And the guy was, you know where Canada is? Uh-huh. North of there. And sure enough it was. And so we were my ex-wife and I were up there. My daughter was born up in the UP. And so I was up there for 4 years, and I got used to it. And so the adjustment wasn't all that bad. Mm-hmm. Much more snow over there. 150 inches of snow every year, whether you wanted it or not.
Yeah.
And nobody wanted it, so.
Thank you for your service, by the way.
Oh. I was in an air-conditioned room for 3.5 years. Trust me, I didn't do very much.
So what are you finding that you enjoy about being here?
And people.
Yeah.
100% the people. Mm-hmm. The way that they've welcomed me has been nothing short of remarkable. So, and I'm actually doing something that, granted, they want to see, and I'm hopefully doing it in a way they want to see it. Mm-hmm. But so far they've been so nice and welcoming to me, and the things that I've seen out of them have been so pleasant that I can't imagine that it's going to get worse. Maybe I'll screw up someday and they'll just, really want to tear my hide off. But hopefully I'll be able to mind my P's and Q's for long enough to keep that from happening.
So what brought you out here? Was it one of those just like hand-raising moments?
Not really. Well, maybe. My ex-wife and I were married for 23 years, and then we were divorced for 7 or 8. We decided to get back together, and we were together for another 3 or 4. And she decided things weren't going in the direction that she wanted to. It was an agreement that we made early on. We still get along great. We were texting each other earlier today before I came down here. We talk to each other all the time. And she said, I don't feel like everything's going the way that I want it to go. And so maybe it's time for us to go ahead and go in our separate directions. If you want to stay here in town, maybe we'll keep seeing each other, that kind of thing. And I said, no, if that's the decision you've come to, then that's what I'll go ahead and do. I guess about a week went by, and I was an assistant manager at a furniture store or some nonsense down in South Mississippi. And I was off one day, sitting there watching a soccer game on TV in my garage in my little man cave that I had set up there. And I got up out of my chair, walked inside, opened up my computer, turned it on, went to journalismjobs.com, typed in sports reporter, and this was the first job that showed up on the list. And so I took the email address, put it into the email thingy, gave them my resume and a bunch of my clips that I had in reserve and a cover letter that I rewrote a little bit, and heard a response in 24 hours, and then I was up here 10 days later.
Whoa!
Maybe 2 weeks, possibly 2 weeks.
Exciting.
Yeah, it happened very fast.
Yeah. So tell me more about the journey. Like,
Well,
how long have you been? You said, how long have you been reporting for?
I've been a reporter since 1998. I was running my own company, mowing grass, doing landscaping, odd jobs, that kind of thing in Enid, Oklahoma. And I used to stop by the newsroom to shoot the breeze with people down there because I had a little part-time job taking scores over the phone. We'd write little paragraphs and take box scores and throw them into a big file for football and basketball and stuff like that on the busy nights. So I got kind of friendly with all the folks down there. And I was just down there getting a glass of water, mowing my grass, mowing my lawns and all that. It's hot. And I'm standing over there watching the sports reporters argue over across the room. And so, what are you guys arguing over? We don't have anybody to cover American Legion baseball this weekend, and it's the opening weekend for American Legion baseball. It's really big around here. And I said, I'll do it. And they went, seriously? The sports editor, Mark Roundtree, he goes, seriously? I said, sure. If you need it done, I'll do it. I'm not doing anything this weekend. Oh, okay. Well, let me talk to you. Takes me aside. It was like a week, maybe 5 days before it happened. Read all the major league stories on the AP you can read. Read every baseball story you can for the next 5 days. And then, you know how to keep score? I know how to keep score. Okay, just keep score. Go get a couple quotes from the coach.
So this was just like, sports weren't like your thing quite yet at this time.
No, I wasn't a reporter at all. I was an athlete growing up. Mm-hmm. I was always an athlete. Mm-hmm. I played football, basketball, baseball, mm-hmm. soccer.
But that kind of began the journey of your reading the articles of sports and.
Oh yeah, I mean I would read them, but I never paid attention to the form or the style. That never kind of came up. Mm-hmm. But he told me to take a look at it, yeah. and then once you get done with the game, just duplicate that. Mm-hmm. Just learn what that process is and just duplicate it. So I go down, cover the first game early in the morning, 7:30, something in the morning, and figured that out. Got it done, ran back to the office, wrote the story, and sent it off to him through the computer. And he opens it up and he's like, "Oh, well, you've done this before." I said, "No, I just did what you told me to do." Mm-hmm. And he said, "Okay, cool. There's 2 more games. Go down and hit those 2 games." And I said, "Okay," because I already knew that was going to be covered in 3.
Yeah.
So I went down there and covered the other 2 games, and then when the night was over, he took me aside and said, "How would you like to do this for the summer?" I said, "Do what? Cover baseball?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "How many games do you want me to cover?" He said, "As many as you want." "Are you paying me hourly or are you paying me by the story?" "Hourly." "Giddy up." And that's how I got started. And then whenever one of the sports reporters left, Patrick, he said, Mark said, "I want you to apply for this job." I applied for it and I got it, and then that's how I got started with a career in journalism, period, but sports journalism specifically.
Man. So then from there, did you travel? Did you stay? Like.
Yeah, it was kind of unfortunate because we'd only been in Enid for about 6 or 8 months, and then Melinda, my ex-wife, got an assignment to Alamogordo, New Mexico to do solar observations. She's a weather forecaster, and she'd always wanted to do that. And so she said, I know you've only been doing sports writing for 6 or 8 months, but this is a really good opportunity. I said, no, I signed up for that. You know, when you decided to go ahead and stay in the military and I decided to get out, we always made the agreement that I wasn't going to gripe or complain about it. If this is your career and it's important to you, and if you want to do this, and we'll move down the road, I'll find a job there. I'm not worried about it. Got out there, and I'd been working as a stringer for the Alamogordo Daily News. All of a sudden, I got a phone call one day, and the publisher, Richard Colthorpe, he says, Gaylon, what are you doing right now? It's like a Monday. And I'm just sitting here drinking coffee. You want to come on down to the office? I said, you need me for something? He said, yeah, I kind of do. I said, cool. Come on down to the office. Hey, we just had our news editor just kind of flamed out on us. So we kind of need somebody to paginate. And you know how to paginate, put the pages together for newspapers? And I said, okay, when do you want me to start? He's like, about 5 minutes from now would be pretty awesome. Is that okay? You want to start about 5 minutes from now? I said, am I a full-time, staff writer, paginator here? And he's like, yep. And I said, all right, I'll get to it.
Have you read Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights book? I just feel like there are some similarities in his book and the way that you are, just kind of like how we were talking earlier about how you're just like, I'll do it, like green light, green light, green light. Yeah. And those moments that are like so pivotal in life that like shift life in just a new direction, in the direction closer to where, closer to the ultimate pursuit of happiness and the end and the journey and all of it.
That's very true.
Wow, that is so neat. But please continue. I just was like, man, this is really sounding like Green Lights.
I honestly didn't know that book existed. I did read a book that he recommended called The Greatest Salesman in the World or something like that I really liked. It was him recommending the book, not him writing it. But that was a very inspiring little book there. Broadcasting happened the same way. And when I was out in Alamogordo, and I did both jobs whenever I was in Alamogordo. I paginated 3 jobs, I guess, sports and news. So I had to learn how to be a news writer. I kept on covering sports because that was where I got my start, and wrote column in news, column in sports. I've always done that, pretty much in a disciplined way. I demand of myself 1 story a day at least, even on the days that I'm off.
And that's not exhausting at all?
No. I write way more than that. I wrote or contributed, what was it, I think 18 last week, but it was all stories, and some of it was sports stuff and little calendars and things like that, podcast counts, things like that. But it's some kind of item that we submit that generates interest and readership to the paper. We do the same thing for bowling results. I do those because we get 500 people per day want to find out what the bowling results are. So that's awesome. Anything that drives content.
There's a big tournament. There's a big teen tournament today at
I
think I don't know if it was a weekend long event, but at the Paragon. And it was just I've been working there on and off for like 8 years, and I'd never seen so many people in there, and it's just incredible to watch these young kids bowl the way that they do. So that's awesome that you're even like featuring that, because we just interviewed a gal who does rodeo, and she was just saying how there's not a lot of support in the school district for outside sports that aren't connected, and like bowling is kind of one of those where it's like, man, you might have like a championship bowler in your high school and you have no idea.
Yeah, that's one thing that we try to focus on and try to be cognizant of, and something that we also encourage the community to do. I don't know everything that's going on. Contrary to unpopular opinion, we don't know everything that's happening on the calendar in any given week. And so we really rely upon the community to just give us a little heads up. And we get it every now and then. Folks were communicating with me before they started the youth football playoffs. Well, we were in the middle of the high school playoffs, and we're in the middle of covering DSU. And so there's only 40 hours in a week, theoretically, in a work week. And so we have to actually decide which one is we have time for. And so over the summer, whenever schools were out, teams were out of town, I would go down and take pictures of the kids playing in their softball and baseball tournaments whenever they were closing out their seasons. I did that during their playoffs. If I had time, and I'll always make time for it. But we do need the public to be able to tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
So we are aware of it. And we've done the same thing with rodeo. Whenever I get rodeo results for DSU, those go in. Whenever somebody sends me a box score or something like that, or a score sheet for volleyball from Heart River, from
cool.
Richard and Taylor, from wherever Bowman County sends me them very religiously and deliberately, and all that every week goes into the paper. Doesn't take me very long to write them, but I got to have that information. I don't have time to drive all the way out to Bowman County to cover a volleyball game. But if you send me a piece of paper with all the results on it and all the data on it, I'll put that in there. I ain't got no problem with it. And I tell people the same thing all the time. I do the same thing with rodeo or anything else either. Either way, I wouldn't care.
So I feel like I'm going to ask a question that you probably get all the time, but like, what is it about journalism that you love? Like, you sound so passionate. You've been doing this. You're consistently striving. I'm going to ask you more about what you're doing with the press and just like how you and Josiah are really like making things rock and roll over there. But I want to hear like what.
Every day's different. There's no day that's the same. So it's very difficult to get bored with a job that is never the same. It's impossible. And when I say not every day is the same, it doesn't duplicate each other in any way. You do cover a baseball game, and you do cover a football game. We're going to be covering basketball games. And so for the untrained eye, I guess, it seems like those are all the same. They're not. Every game is different. Everyone has its own drama. Everyone has its own complexion. Everyone has its own changes. And so if you're able to keep your eye on all of those differences and all those changes and really soak it in, it makes the world a much more enriching place. Yeah. Taking things like moment by moment, stuff like that, day by day.
Why can't we just do that with all of life, though?
Well, that's a good question.
Pressures, right?
Stress. And I tried to tell somebody the other day, there's really no such thing as stress. All stress is self-induced. Yeah. That's all it is. Nobody forces it on you but you.
So what do you have to say about that to people?
Well, let it go. It's going to you're going to either resolve or it's going to go away. No matter what it is, that's not the end of the world. No matter what goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. It's taking it too seriously.
Absolutely. And I had this one time where I was so behind schedule. I felt like I was like an hour behind schedule. Just something kept adding onto the list and it pushed everything back, and I was just, and then once you get into that cycle, it's so hard to almost like catch yourself because now you're spiraling and I'm late, and I saw a friend that I ran into a friend that I hadn't seen for a really long time, and I was like, hey, I'm really busy, I can't say hi right now, but I'm gonna catch you later. Well, I'm an hour behind, right? Everything just kept adding on, and sure thing, I didn't get to see my friend. And I felt so awful that I was like, man, I didn't have 1 minute out of being, you can't be more late in life, right?
Right.
There's no such thing as time. And it's like we create that intensity within our own mind, and then we lose the opportunities to just be present.
Yeah, and you also kind of lose your connection to what it is that you wanted to get done over the course of the day in the first place. All of a sudden your mind is so distracted and elsewhere, right? Where you were sitting there originally thinking, well, I want to get this done today, I want to get that done today, I want to get this done. And then the ones that you thought were the most important things that had to get done get shunted to the back, and you got done with all the nonsense and all the garbage instead of getting done with the one thing you really seriously wanted to do that day, and that was going to have lunch with your friend or going to spend some time with your friend.
Or just spend 1 minute to just be like, to connect, look into her eyes and just be there with her for 1 minute rather than just say for 10 seconds, I'm sorry, I'm really busy right now.
And nobody really believes us, do nobody really believes us, do they, whenever we say, you know what, I seriously did not have 1 minute. I could not break away for 1 minute. Nobody believes us. And part of the reason they don't believe us is because they know it's not true. Because we just didn't make time. And that's the way I see it. That's the way I feel
right. So it's like such a big lesson to like not create that stress in our own mind, to like breathe and slow down and just know that everything's going to be okay, right?
You try to do it like a checklist?
Me?
Yeah. Do you do it like a checklist? Just write it down and be cognizant of what it is you had to do?
Oh, yes. I have to write it down, because if I don't write it down, then it stays in my head, and then it kind of gets, that's not the safest place for it to be, because then I forget, or,
Those words become kind of a springboard for you to be able to jump out of yourself, throw it onto the paper, and then at least it's there, and then you can reference back to it, and then you can focus.
Open up my
very
mind.
Specifically, yes, focus very specifically on getting this one done initially, and then move on to the next one.
Absolutely. I'm like, get it out of my mind, out on the paper, and then that opens up space for more.
Right. No, I recognize. You're right.
So when you came to the Dickinson Press, and like, what created the interest of the momentum that you guys are creating right now?
There wasn't a vacuum in what was going on, because Josiah was one man at the time doing the job of basically at least two people, and really more accurately three, because we would theoretically like to have a stringer and somebody like that who comes in and works for us and works with us, especially if it's a young person who wants to get involved in journalism. And getting involved in journalism, not only that, but also getting involved with broadcasting. It's an opportunity that presents itself rarely to young people, but once you know how to do the job, and once you can do it, and you've proven that you can do the job, it's a very great opportunity. But when I got up here, there was there wasn't a vacuum. I don't want to call it a vacuum, because I don't want to slight Josiah, because he was doing the yeoman's work of all of what was going on, and doing it very well, and trying to cover a series and variety of sports that are very difficult to cover. Wrestling and gymnastics and swimming and things like that are not easy to write. So he was not only covering the standard meat and potatoes of your baseball, your football, your basketball, he was also taking time to cover soccer, making sure he got out to cover swim meets, being there for volleyball, and so on and etc. So as soon as he had that extra time to free himself up, and when I first got up here, it was basketball season. And he'd already gotten used to covering basketball. Basketball was something I was accustomed to covering. And we realized that we can go in two different directions and now cover two different items on the same night, satisfy the reader, and then we started taking videos on our phones and throwing those into the stories. And we started doing a lot more galleries.
What gave you those ideas to do that?
We talked about them together. It was stuff that we discussed, and things that we saw as opportunities that we just never had time for. When you're one person going to cover an event, and you have to go from that event to another event, in some cases two in one night, now all of a sudden you don't have time to really put your energy into taking good photos. You're not necessarily going to be able to write as good of a story, because you're not going to pick up all the subtle details of the game. And so you're divided into two minds almost invariably on trying to do an actual good job. So instead of doing one full good job, you're doing half of a good job in one area and another area. And so what that freed us both up to do was to take those little short videos. It doesn't matter if they're 20 or 30 seconds long. Now all of a sudden we have time to do it, because you don't have to hustle out of there at halftime and go run to another event or whatever. You're able to actually spend your time there and figure out ways to more ably satisfy the reader, the listener, the viewer, and so on and so forth, all in one package, instead of just thinking that you're only satisfying one need with a bunch of words. And so all those were opportunities that we saw present themselves. As far as the podcasting and things like that, that just grew of just having extra time. In all honesty, you make time to do the things that you want to do. You make time to do the things that are going to matter and are going to help grow the products, help grow yourself, make you a better journalist, a better communicator, or whatever. So we've taken those opportunities every chance we get.
Wow. I feel like that kind of connects back into like what we were talking about, like if you take the things out of your mind and write them down, it opens up space. Well, it's kind of like when you share the load, more gets done, more creativity happens, because the space is being opened up, and we think like two minds coming together is what makes it happen, but what makes it happen is maybe just the space in the mind that opens up because of the additional person.
You're not so stressed out.
Right.
You don't feel like the next moment has to be filled by something. You feel like you had to take a couple minutes and take a breath. And really, the only complaint he and I have a lot of times is we don't talk enough. We talk to each other virtually every day, but we don't talk as often as we would like to. And we have to actually set aside time to plan out what we're going to be doing, especially if it's a big project or something like that. The weekend sports events that are coming up. We have to figure those things out. It doesn't take a long time. You know, it takes 20 minutes, 30 minutes for he and I to sit down and do the things that we need to do. Shoot, whenever we do the podcast, it takes 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and then we're done with it. And then we start the editing process. And the editing process is done in about an hour and a half, I would say. You know, at 2 hours tops.
So please tell me more about this podcast.
Yeah, it started off like I was saying before we started rolling the cameras. It started off as just me kind of breaking down what was going on that week in sports, what we had in the paper, what we have online, what we have in the e-edition of the paper, because we do technically have 3 different products. So I would just go through the gamut of all of it in the space of 12, 15 minutes whenever I did it. I tried to keep it around 10. And as I did it for, like I was telling you, about 6 months. And I got tired of what I was doing. I got tired of the way I was doing it. I didn't like the way it sounded. It felt like it was an ad. I got bored with myself and I got bored with the product. And so we had talked earlier, whenever I first got here, about the idea of somewhere down the road, I postulated, you and I are going to be doing this together. I would like to do this together, something like that. Probably trying to be nice and soft about it. You know, this would be a really nice thing for you and I to do together. This would be a lot of fun. And it took a while to really gravitate in that direction. And it also took me, not because I wanted to let it go. I got tired of my own voice, and I got tired of hearing myself do it. It started sounding the same every single time I did it. And I don't like that. I like variety, and I like difference, and I like uniqueness. And the other thing that I wanted to do with it, and this was a big goal of mine, and you alluded to it a couple minutes ago, I wanted it to sound like a couple guys shooting the breeze on some lawn chairs about sports. I wanted it to sound authentic, and I wanted it to sound real. I didn't want it to be too scripted. We have a rough pencil sketch outline of a script that we are going to talk about this, we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about that. But it's more like a Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm script than it is like a Seinfeld script where everybody has to deliver specific lines. We have an open-ended way of looking at it. We're not going to talk about how many touchdowns this person scored. No, we're going to talk generally about the game, like normal people would do if they're sitting on a bar stool. The 2 guys are not sitting on a bar stool next to each other and going, oh, well, I cannot believe that so-and-so had 15 for 19 completions and 275 yards with 3 touchdowns. Nobody says that. They just say, what a killer game that kid had, huh?
My goodness.
And so that felt more authentic, and that felt more real. Instead of it being broken down to nuts and bolts and getting too deep into the numbers and trying to focus too much on it. Numbers can only tell you so much in sports. Don Shula had a great quote where he said something about statistics are basically liars. Statistics don't tell the truth, or something along those lines. I'll look up the quote, but it's another old saying. There's three kinds of things. There's liars, damn liars, and statistics. And so those are the forms of lies. 3 forms of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. So I don't like getting too much into that, but I do like talking about sports. I'll talk about sports all day long. And we get questions about sports whenever we're out someplace. People want to get some feedback off of us and things like that. And we're always accommodating. But this is just another way to reach them with something we're talking about anyway. And we've gotten some great response. I feel bad because we didn't do it this past week because I had to have a tooth extracted, and plus my voice has been a little bit raspy. But it was one of those things where my dentist told me, I don't want you talking very much over the next 24 hours. And unfortunately, I do talk a lot. So.
It's strong, it's powerful, and it's energetic, and I love it.
Well, thank you.
And Josiah was saying that, you know, you're kind of like a mentor to him, and I can definitely see that, and that's so awesome that that relationship is happening.
Well, we've had this conversation in the past, he and I, and all of the opportunities that I took in my life were just there. They were there because I happened to be in the newsroom whenever they were looking for somebody to cover baseball. The broadcasting thing happened because a friend of the photographers out at the newspaper in Alamogordo introduced me to a guy who owned an insurance business, a guy by the name of Mike Hames. And Mike Hames had his own radio show on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He and I got along politically, got along sports-wise, got along news-wise and things like that. Had very similar ideas, very similar ideals. And one day he came to me and said, hey man, how would you like to fill in on, because I only do the morning show on KRSY on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. How would you like to fill in on Tuesday and Thursday? And I said, you want to give me a radio show? He said, yeah, it's on for an hour, first thing in the morning, 7 to 8. I said, yeah, what's Phil think, the owner of the station? He was like, he's on board, he wants to bring you in. And I just went, giddy up. And then that turned into the
so cool.
The sports guy who was on the AM or on the FM station. His name's Kerry Eldridge. He works at a radio station in East Texas now. He came walking into the broadcast room one day and he said, hey man, how would you like to do color commentary for football when the season comes up this year? And I was like, cool. Yeah, awesome. When am I getting paid by the hour? Yeah, getting paid by the hour. Awesome. I had to go cover the game anyway because I'm doing it for the paper. I might as well get paid for 2 jobs instead of 1. And then I did the same thing for baseball season. And I did that for 3 years. It was amazing. Just anytime an opportunity came up, I just went, sure, why not? Let's give it a shot.
Okay, so for some people, I feel like that would be frightening. How are you living? How have you created a mindset where you're just able to roll with it?
I don't think about myself. I think about the subject of what I'm talking about. I don't even think about myself. I don't put any energy into worrying about what I'm doing. I just do it the way I've been doing it for 24 years. And I don't want to lose sight of what I was getting ready to say about Josiah. Josiah is the same age basically right now as I was when I got started. So to give that kind of a head start in those areas will be nothing but a benefit to him in 24 years.
Absolutely.
25 years, quarter of a century.
Wow.
Whenever he's my age, he'll be so much farther ahead of his peers that it's only going to benefit him. And so that's what I view as mentorship, is to give somebody an opportunity based upon what I've already experienced and based upon what I've already done, because I've already seen the value in it. I see how much fun it is. So that's the reason that I wanted to do it.
Wow. Was that something that you have done before, or is this just something that you recognized? You saw a little bit of him in you, or you in him, and created that relationship?
I saw Josiah has so much potential, and one thing that I want to encourage is to do something a little bit different. Get outside of your comfort zone. Push yourself. Stretch yourself. Just let go of yourself. Don't worry about yourself. Just try something new. And the podcast that we're doing right now, we've done 3 editions of it. It's just getting better every single time we do it. And I'm sure it's going to be 6 months from now, it's going to be even better than it was, 2 weeks ago.
Oh, definitely.
It's just going to get better.
It's just like practicing. It's just like putting hours in. I heard, I don't know if it was I could be totally wrong on who this person is, but maybe it was Shaun White or something like that. He decided that he wanted. Yeah. So he's a professional Olympian snowboarder or something, and it might not be him. I could be totally wrong. But some like boarder athlete. But he was like, I just decided that I wanted to be a drummer. So I just kind of applied the whole 200-hour thing, that I would put 200 hours into whatever sport you want to do, then you'll be really good at it. And he's like, or violin or whatever it may be, you just put 200 hours in. He's like, well, I just put 200 hours in playing the drums, and now he's part of a band or something like that.
Right.
He's like, yeah, he tours and stuff. And so it's just, doesn't matter what you're doing, like, just put in the hours, right?
Yeah,
if it's what you
really
want.
And really, for people who don't push themselves, I think it was Ben Franklin said, generally speaking, people who are bored with themselves. You always have to keep yourself from being bored with yourself. Or what you'll do is you'll just go through the motions. And you'll just go through what you have to do that day to try to satisfy whatever your needs are, just to make it through the day, instead of actually enjoying the day. But the reason you're bored is because you're bored with you. You're not bored with life. There's just too much stuff to do out there. There's too many things going on,
Okay, well, this is interesting, right? Because I love what you're saying, but then there's also that side of finding peace in the stillness. So what do you have to say for that, maybe? Is there a way, is that like balance? Can you have both?
It depends on how much time you need to have peace. There's some people who need their first thing in the morning and just loll around in bed for 15 minutes. And then there's other people who can have another 15 minutes before they go to sleep, say a prayer before you go to bed, whatever, and you get as much enrichment as you need to out of that stillness as you need to get through the day. And then I'm sure that there's a lot of other people out there just like me who enjoy being in the middle of the maelstrom, who enjoy being in the middle of chaos and trying to find a way to manage it. It's something that doesn't bother me. In the old days of journalism, we had a deadline every night at roughly 11:30 or midnight or 12:30. And that paper and those machines had to be rolling at those hours. And if they weren't rolling, somebody was coming out of that back room and they were screaming at you, because if you're 15 minutes late on that thing, that means you're a half hour late delivering the newspapers at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then we get calls from the readers and the calls from the subscribers, and it just filters and trickles down and provides a ripple effect. So it was this constant pressure. Then you were always aware of how much time there was. That thing meant everything. It meant everything in the world. And you learned how to write into a hole. If there was a story hole set aside, you were writing into that hole. If you needed 300 words, you figured out in your head before you wrote the story that it required 300 words. What are the 300 best words to throw in there? That kind of thing. It was just constant going on. And so over those years that I was part of a daily news product, it was just natural. Doing this part of the job over here, the way they structure things at the Dickinson Press, they do things in a way that makes it a lot more mellow, I want to say. There's not a lot of pressure on it. There's not this minute by minute demand. And so what that's really allowed us to do is not only take the time to be able to compose our thoughts and declutter whatever it is would otherwise go into the story, it actually gives us the ability to be a little bit more artistic about it and put a little bit more of ourselves into those stories. And I think both Josiah and I do that with the things that we write. And it's a lot more fun that way.
Yeah.
It just makes you want to go to work. I go into work every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I can't wait to get in there. I can't wait to get to work every day.
Wow.
So I just love doing the job.
How is it like journaling now as opposed to then? Like, you've been in the industry for so long. Like, what are the challenges that you're facing now?
I'm not sure. You mean a negative challenge, like something that I have to navigate, or are you talking about something new that I want to do in the future?
Well, I guess, let me rephrase that question, because like, I'm curious where, like, the differences in the industry as time has gone on.
Well, they
having to learn how, like, learning the change process.
Yeah, they expect less people to do a little bit more work. That's true of any industry at this point. In 2023, you could talk to anybody out there, and I don't care if they're a bank teller, I don't care if they're a waitress 2 doors down, I don't care if they're working out on a cement mixer. Their bosses are all expecting them to do one extra job pretty much all the time while they're doing it. It just depends on what their nature of work is. And we're no different. But we do get an opportunity to do things that enhance the product that don't take nearly as long. One of the things that I'd like to do is in the morning is just sit down and do a brief 6-minute thing and just set my phone over there, put a couple lapel microphones on, and talk about what happened in sports last night. 3 to 5 minutes, little short video, no editing, straight into the point, be done with it, throw it up online. That's one of the ideas. I want to start doing interviews kind of like this with my coworkers. And then another thing that I want to do is I want for my coworkers to interview each other. So not for our purposes, but for your purpose and their purpose. So we feel more like neighbors and not so much like judges, juries, and executioners of the things that go on every single day. They feel like we live next door, which we do. They feel like we shop at the grocery store that they do, which we do. We're neighbors of theirs. We don't preside over this place. We don't evaluate this place. We simply talk about the things that go on here, and we put them on a page. That's all we do. The journalism's job is one simple thing: tell people who weren't there what happened. That's it. That's all we do. And if you do more than that, you're doing too much.
I love that. That's beautiful. That's a great driving force to, like, no wonder you wake up every day and you're excited to go to work.
Oh yeah, that's the way I feel. That's the way I feel all the time.
That's like purpose and passion. I just love that. It's been such a theme.
It's so much fun. I've known some journalists of all stripes over the years, and they just slog through the job. Heck, I've got 2 friends who collectively have watched 3 people, 2 different friends, 2 different newspapers, at 2 different times, or 3 different times as it were, watched 3 people die at their desks. 3 had heart attacks and died at their desk, collapsed onto their desk. They had to bring in the paramedics, they had to bring in the gurney, they had to cart them out of there, doing the CPR on them, trying to get them out the door, dead, at their desk. And I promised myself, I'm never going to do that. That's never going to happen to me. And if it does, it's not going to be because I feel stressed out. Mm-hmm. If it is, it's because I'm not taking good care of myself. Mm-hmm. That'll be my fault. I'll take the blame for whenever I don't do the right thing. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to do it because I'm stressed out. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do it because it is what it is.
So how do you keep a healthy mindset? How do you stay that way?
Just if there's a problem, I look at what the problem is and I try to figure out if there's a solution. Mm-hmm. If there's no solution that I can control, I let it go. Mm-hmm. If there's a game that I can't get to because the calendar doesn't meet it, that's not my problem anymore. I just simply can't get there. The calendar doesn't. It's out of my control. I'm done with it. Mm-hmm. If it's out of my control, I don't even pay attention to it. I let it go every time.
Picking your battles.
Yep.
Choose the way your energy is being used.
Yep. I can fret over it, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, somebody wants me to give somebody a phone call. Okay,
mm-hmm.
well, I didn't get a chance to do it today. It's already 5 o'clock. I'll go ahead and do it tomorrow. Life doesn't stop and start on my approval. Mm-hmm. So I just let it go.
Mm-hmm. And that's why your energy can stay up.
Sure. Because I also know that over the course of that day, I've done X, Y, and Z. And I'm satisfied with X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And once I've finished X, Y, and Z, I don't think that there needs to be an A or a numeral for me to check another item off the list. Mm-hmm. No, I feel pretty satisfied with what I did. That's another thing that a lot of people don't do, is you don't find ways to be self-satisfied. Not you personally, the editorial you. Mm-hmm. People don't find ways to be self-satisfied and say, you know what, I did a pretty doggone good job today. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty satisfied. I'm pretty happy with myself. Cool. It's not patting yourself on the back or being arrogant or condescending or anything like that. You just feel like you did a good job. There's no harm in that.
Yeah.
There's no reason for people to not feel that way. No good reason whatsoever. You know how much work you did today?
Right.
If you're not
Why
satisfied,
not allow yourself a win for each day?
Yeah. If you're not satisfied with it, do some more. Mm-hmm. Do some more tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Be more satisfied tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Recognize the mistake you made today. Move on to tomorrow and see if
How did you get to this? How did you learn this? I want to hear more about that journey. The lessons that you had to learn to get to this place.
If I told you that I could figure it out, I can't. I don't know how it all came about. I just recognized that it was true. That's probably the easiest way I can define it. Is I think a lot, and so when I arrive at something that is true, then I accept that it's true. But I don't know what the process is. I probably had to fail a lot. Generally speaking, we have to fall flat on our faces to succeed in anything. And there were plenty of times where I fell flat on my face and probably stressed myself out, stressed out my ex-wife, stressed out my children. I wasn't there for hours and hours at a time. And I had to figure out how to separate it. Shoot, when I first started out in journalism, they really enjoyed that salary thing. And I was working upwards of 60 hours a week. But once I learned how to do the job and I figured out efficient ways to do it, I was only working 50 hours a week. I was saving 10 hours off my time. I was still working 10 hours off the clock because I was on salary. But I was willing to make that sacrifice because I wanted a career and I wanted journalism. I realized what the sacrifices were. Spoke about it and said, this is something I'm going to have to do. This is something I'm passionate about. And once I figure out how to do it, I'm going to do it faster and I'm going to do it better. But in the meantime, I have to learn it and I've got to fail at it.
What motivates you for journalism, for that?
There's so much to do. There's no end to it. Yeah. You can do as much or as little as you want to. It's good. It goes on all the time.
Yeah.
And I love being a writer. I love doing my job. I love being a writer. I'd rather write than do anything, except maybe talk. The radio.
You have such a great radio voice. Like I'm like, wow, I want to hear you at 7 a.m. That sounds really weird, but.
radio was such an easy job that there were times I felt guilty taking the money. Not very guilty, but I did feel kind of guilty taking the money because it was so much fun and so easy. It almost felt like second nature, like I should have been doing it the whole time. I should have been doing this with my life the entire time. But how would I have known if I just didn't happen to be in Alamogordo, New Mexico? I had to go through all the places and all the stuff that I did and live all the lives and all the stuff that I had to live in order to get to where I got. And so the fact that I didn't get there soon enough, who cares? I'm here now.
Totally. Oh my goodness, I love that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever any wrong moves.
Mm-mm. No.
Everything's happening for us, not to us.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so here we are.
And here we are. We're sitting in a podcast room in Dickinson, North Dakota, and who knows how in the world we could have ever possibly been in the same place at the same time with our videographer standing by ably. There's no way it would have happened if all these things didn't come together. And that's another thing, is all these things have to happen. It takes such an amazing amount of circumstances for any single thing to happen. It doesn't matter if it's a job interview or a victory in a baseball game or occasionally a fender bender outside. You think about all the events that have the tumblers have to fall into place for every single event that happens in the world. And some of them are random, sure. I recognize that. I'm not one of those everything is meant to be or there's a reason for everything. Yeah, there's a reason for everything. Sometimes the reason is because you didn't prepare well enough or because you're a nincompoop. There's reasons that I failed, and those failures were all mine. That's something else that I accept.
Yeah.
But then I've tried to find ways to not do that again. Okay, this didn't work. Let's not do that again.
Well, I read something the other day that said there are no obstacles, only possibilities. Something along those lines. Right. And that kind of was reminded me of that when you said
it's the same thing about luck. People say, well, there's no such thing as luck. No, there is such a thing as luck. And it's been recognized that luck is the nexus of opportunity and preparation. And as long as you have an opportunity but you prepared yourself, that's what luck is. That's all luck is that meeting point between those two items, between those two realities. And so all these little things that go on in our lives, you kind of have to embrace them. You have to recognize that they're there. Some of them are terrible. Don't get me wrong. There's tragedies in everything. I'm not saying it's all sunshines and unicorns, and rainbows and flowers. But the vast majority of stuff that happens in life is great.
Yeah. When you can see that even the worst of things are sometimes the best things that are happening to us.
Well,
it's you can really just have so much gratitude for the journey and just all of it, everything. The most painful things, but also the most beautiful things.
Yeah, even the bad stuff helps you grow.
Oh yeah, so. As long as you recognize it, because sometimes you can just live in quote. It's like trying to know things are good, know things are bad. Trying to live in that space. Yeah. But yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah, lost my train of thought there. But wow, this was a powerful talk. Holy smokes.
Well, I certainly have enjoyed it.
Wow. I thought we were talking about sports, but we were talking about way more incredible things.
Well,
sports are all incredible. Sorry, that sounded totally. I just wasn't prepared for. I wasn't prepared to need a journal right over here to just that was a good one. That was a good one. I was wait, pen and paper. And I'm oh wait, we're recording, so we'll have it all. We'll always have this.
That's right. It's always going to be there.
And that's why I ask you where how did you come to all of this
Honestly, it took a long time. I am admittedly 54 years old, and it's not as though I just started doing all this. And throughout the years, I've had a lot of fun. I've had things that didn't go great. I've had things that have gone fabulously, and I just don't try to take the peaks and the valleys any more seriously than the horizon. They're all there. You can look at them and appreciate them.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. So, that's my thing. Is just to look at it from an outsider's perspective. You got to kind of let things go and push them off at a distance to be able to really see them. If you get too close to them, then they have a tendency to wear you out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They will stress you to the point where you're too close to it, and you really need that distance. You really need that space.
Yeah.
Because it's right there up in your grill,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't get away from it. Well, you've got to find a way to reach that escape velocity. Go in the other direction for a little bit.
Totally. Once I catch myself in those places, then I recognize I'm like, oh my goodness, you are in your head. You're not even like, you're not even here. You're not even present. You don't even know what's going on around you. So the moment that I catch myself living in that space in my head, then that's exactly what I do. I pull myself out of my body, and like from a bird's eye perspective, I look in or look down and kind of see what really is going on. And maybe you've got this down pat, but like you just kind of recognizing the battles that you need to put energy towards or not put energy towards. And when you're living in this space where you're just in your mind, you're not even like allowing yourself to see that.
Right. I agree with that. And a lot of folks will try to look at the difficulties they face and things like that. Well, there's tons of those. But for every one of those, you alluded to it a little while ago, for every one of those difficulties or every one of those problems, really there's a solution. So you can't have a solution without a problem in the first place. You can't reverse engineer and not have a solution without a problem. Otherwise, you're just standing still.
Well, then how cool are the problems that you get to have a solution for?
Exactly. And there's always going to be those.
Come on, problems. I want to have the solution.
And there's always going to be those. So figuring out better and efficient ways to solve those problems, the better off you are.
Amen.
And you can do it much faster the next time.
Yes. Woo! I'm pumped. What are we going to do? Let's do something. You said coffee in the morning yet?
and it'll be the case.
Well, Gaylon, this has been absolutely this has been an absolute pleasure.
Me too.
I like stuttering.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, and thank you so much for coming on. And how can people who tune in, can they find your podcast through the Dickinson Press, or how can they stay connected to everything that you've got going on and all of the ideas that are to come?
The best way to do it is we have, 99 cents a month for 3 months. It's at www.thedickinsonpress.com. You can go there and you can click on the deal that is available, and then there's a segment down the left-hand side, which is a drop-down menu in both your online version and in your computer desktop version, and you can find podcasts. It's roughly right in the middle.
So cool.
So, and all the podcasts are listed, whether they're news or whether they're sports, it doesn't matter. They're all listed under the same column.
Amazing.
The same page. And all those things are available too. And it's a heck of a deal for 99 cents a month for people to be able to do it, because then you can actually figure out whether you like it or not. And the subscription rate from there is not all that much after that. So it's well worth it if you want to stay in touch with the things that are going on in Southwest North Dakota. So
I feel like you should start a little mentorship column.
Maybe someday.
Plant that little seed maybe in the future.
There's always more ideas to be had, and there's always more things to be accomplished. So
yeah.
I don't run away from it, I can tell you that.
Gaylon's good talks.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Seriously, it was such a pleasure, and I'm so glad that we have this whole thing to look back on and just take little bits of what you shared and be able to apply that in our daily lives. And then fast forward to the next clip that you had where you just dropped some serious knowledge on us, and then work on that. This was just really, really, it was really wonderful. And I learned a lot from you, and I thank you for that.
He and I were over hanging out someplace the other night, and I was kind of doing the same thing. And we'd been having a little bit, it was on homecoming day for DSU, so we'd been having fun that day. He kind of said some of the same thing. Oh, look at you just over here dropping wisdom or whatever. I said, yeah, Obi-Wan jabroni. So I went ahead and got the shirt printed up. I said, I got the shirt's on its way. Obi-Wan jabroni.
That's awesome. Oh my goodness. I love it.
Never take yourself too seriously. That's the final lesson of the day.
Oh my goodness.
Never take yourself too serious.
Have you seen me? I'm I'm just I'm a goofy hotcake, so.
You're freewheeling it.
Because right there, who says goofy hotcake? What is that? I don't even know where that came from.
T-shirt idea. There you go.
Oh, see, you guys guys are just like ideas left and right. I love it.